What's up, gamers? It's your host, Cobra, and today we're doing a deep dive breakdown on the new Frontier roadmap. A couple of days ago, the Frontier team finally put out its updated roadmap, and we in the community have been waiting for this for quite a while because Frontier pushes a lot of hype, so having an understanding of approximately when and what milestones are coming next really helps you play the market if you're interested in doing some trading around this game, and we definitely will be doing a little bit more of that as well. It's also a really big deal because even if you're a long-term holder, there are several very valuable assets that have been released into the marketplace that have not had their utility turned on yet. The roadmap is really broken down into 4 sections. There is the 3 phases that they have outlined for essentially the entire year, as well as the actual game launch in its own section. And today we are going to break down all 4 sections, highlighting the most important milestones for the project to achieve. So let's start with Phase 0, which is kind of interesting because according to the roadmap, it actually started a month ago. Now that's actually when we first expected the roadmap to be delivered, so that part does make some sense. However, there were a few delays. Likely it is all of the tremendous detail we have further down on the roadmap that caused that delay. But either way, because it has already started, the first 2 items are already activated and checked off. The first one is that the community prize pool, or the game prize pool, has been funded with $1 million and will continue to grow as it gets a portion of the secondary sales fees. Arguably, the most exciting thing in the entire roadmap is that royalties have been turned on. This means that if you hold a stellar key, then you are already earning royalties. The downside is we don't know exactly what that means because we don't have any details on the royalties that are earned and how much should be expected, but we're going to learn more about that in Phase 0 as well. And either way, it means that when that functionality does finally open up, it's likely we're going to see a bulk payment to catch up for a certain number of weeks or months of collecting those royalties and not being able to pay them out yet. And wrapping up Phase 0 is the Tokenomics launch. Now, I expect this to come somewhere near the end of the phase, which means sometime in April, because Phase 0 wraps up on April 22nd. And either way, when we get that, it is going to be one of the biggest milestones for the entire project because it adds a ton of really, really important detail. And frankly, tokenomics tends to be one of the most complicated things for any game because it involves a lot of factors, and it's really, really important that they get it right. So we appreciate that they have taken their time, and it is very exciting that that will be the next major milestone, even though it's still probably 2 months away. That said, Phase 1 has a ton of things that I'm really, really excited about, and it starts off with the merch drop finally happening. We love merch for the projects that we are supporting here on this channel, and I am hopefully going to find a way to get my hands on at least a Frontier t-shirt, if not a hoodie. We have an epic merch token, and we don't know what that's going to be redeemed for. I purchased it with the hopes that it would be good for a hoodie, and that the basic one would likely be for a t-shirt or a hat. We know now, though, that the Stellar Edition actually is a physical version of the Stellar Key, and it includes a Stellar Key NFT as well. So if anybody speculated, and if they did, they paid multiple ETH to acquire that Stellar merch token, the floor on it is now 20 ETH, and I haven't seen anybody pay that much just yet, but because it includes a Stellar NFT, that makes it worth at least what the Stellar NFT itself is worth, and so you're not going to be able to get these for cheap anymore. Phase 1 is also going to include several partnership announcements, and some of these are ones that I have not heard about yet. There's a potential crossover with Treeverse, which is very interesting. That's not a project we're following yet, but I know it has done very well. There's going to be the deployment of some AR and VR features that will be added to the existing NFT technology, and there's going to be a reveal of their co-development studio, which they've been teasing for a long time. The part that caught my eye, though, is that they are already planning several community AMAs with said studio after the reveal, and that to me is an indication that this is going to be a bigger reveal than we are expecting. Phase 0 is also going to include the release of the game's white paper, which we cannot wait to get our hands on because there's a ton about this game that we still don't know anything about. And at the same time, that is going to include the ICO. Now we know that the token is going to be called data, and so this is going to provide an opportunity for users to finally start accumulating data. We will see what the details are as we get closer to that date, but that is a monumental milestone for the project and a key foundational step towards establishing an actual play and earn economy. Continuing with phase 1 is the Blacklist. Now the Blacklist is going to be Black Box Series 2, and it'll be the next important drop from Frontier. We've got a little bit of time before that's going to come, but when it does, it will be a very big deal. If you are holding a data key, then you will be on the Blacklist, which is their version of the whitelist for that drop, which is great. It also sounds like there may be some special editions available, and I would expect that to be angled towards the seller key holders, although those details are to be revealed. If you don't remember, flash boxes are essentially packs of NFTs. Last time we got 3 with each black box, and one of them was a data key, the other was 2 random flash blocks. And flash blocks are the in-game usable NFTs, so those will be important to add to your collection. We don't know if there will be something extra, like a data key, included in those this time as well, but just to be safe, I will not be selling any of those black boxes. Phase 1 is also going to include a switch to Layer 2. This is an absolutely vital step for the project as it's a game, and games tend to have lots of transactions, and on Ethereum that gets to be incredibly expensive. Now, we don't know where they're going to go. The most likely choices are Polygon or Immutable X. We've had really good experiences with both of those Layer 2s, so it'll be interesting to see what gets chosen. Phase 1 is also going to include the release of custom APIs as well as the proprietary marketplace. And the proprietary marketplace is a great sign because gaming NFTs tend to be a lot more complicated than, say, a PFP, and because of that, marketplaces like OpenSea and LooksRare, while they work well enough, aren't well suited to provide an optimal shopping experience for gaming NFTs, and because of that, a lot of the most successful projects have already built their own custom marketplaces or have intentions to do so in the very near future. The custom APIs are going to allow the community to start building tools around the project as well, which will be welcome as we get closer and closer to the game actually launching. Phase 1 is also going to finally include the Generative Battle Pass drop. Now these are going to go to the holders of 0 and 0S. They serve as a lifetime season pass for the game, and they are also a generative PFP that we can use to represent Frontier on social media. These were originally promised back around Christmas of last year, so they're heavily delayed. That said, not a big deal because we don't actually need them yet, and as long as they come before the game, then all is well. And the item that I expect to come at the very end of Phase 1 is the gameplay trailer. This was also promised a while ago, but we now have a new realistic expectation for when it will come. I expect this will likely be the last item in Phase 1 to be released, because that will lead right up to the game being released. Phase 1 wraps up August 22nd, so that is about 6 months away right now, which means we've got a little bit of time there, and while it could come sooner, I think it's fair to expect this towards the end. And finally, I don't want to gloss over the note at the end of Phase 1 about the overall expectations for that phase, and it points out that while Phase 0 will continue the organic growth of the project, Phase 1 is when we expect to see heavy marketing start to take place, and this will help grow the game, which means it should grow the value of our assets as well, and it should be really interesting to see how they go about this, because the Watcher and his team have been very creative so far, and so I expect this is not going to be just a series of Twitter spaces and announcements, but we'll probably see some interesting stuff here as well. So we made it almost to September on the roadmap and still no mention of the game launch. That is because they've given the game launch its own special section on the roadmap, and I quite like the way that they have done this. They're giving us a 4-month window for when to expect the game launch to actually happen, and it starts July 22nd, goes through October 22nd. That's a pretty big window, but as they've noted here, it's a very clear attempt to under-promise and over-deliver. So I am certain that at this point they are expecting a July or August launch for the game, and they've built in about 3 months of buffer time to accommodate for potential and very likely delays. Now, personally, I don't think it matters too much where in this window the game launch actually arrives. Of course, we all want to see it happen right on July 22nd, but that is very unlikely, and the reasonable expectation is that this will happen in October. However, there is also a very real possibility that it happens sooner than that. I am certain they are aiming for sooner than that. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll be able to get that done. So that wraps up Phase 1. Let's take a look at Phase 2, and the dates for Phase 2 are September 22nd through the end of the year, December 22nd. Safe to assume they're taking a little time off for the holidays after that, but honestly at this point I think you can ignore the dates. It is so far out in the crypto world that there's going to be a bunch of changes and adjustments, some good, some bad, but it's still nice to have these on the roadmap because they are future items and it's nice to know what's coming. So let's take a look at the 3 key items in Phase 2. The first is a crafting feature. Now, we already know that flash blocks are upgradable, but we don't have a ton of specifics on that yet. We'll learn a whole bunch more details when the white paper is released, but sometime after the game launches, they're going to roll out the crafting feature, which should be a bunch of fun. There's also going to be beta access during Phase 2, and you might be scratching your head. Beta access coming after the game launches sounds odd, but beta access in this case means rolling out the free-to-play feature. That also means that when the game launches, it's not going to be free-to-play yet. That's okay. It'll be early, and that can be a reward for holders and investors, but it's important that the game eventually releases the free-to-play features, so we should expect that towards the end of the year. And finally, the one item that I have serious doubts will come in 2022 is called Galactic Conquest. Now, this is totally new as far as I am aware, and it sounds very, very interesting. However, they didn't give us very much details on what this is just yet. It says it is the upper strategic layer to Frontier game. To me, that sounds like it's potentially land or guilds, but we really don't know yet, and it'll be interesting to find out more as we approach the end of the year. The overall note for Phase 2 is that this is when the game really starts to kick into full gear, and we can start to expect several updates to the game along the way. If you've been playing any mobile games or some of the newer console PC games, you'll notice that game as a service or a game that is continually updated and improved upon is the standard nowadays, and that's really what we want to see in blockchain games as well, because continued development of the game encourages continued development and investment into the game economy. So what can we do with all this actionable news to better our position within the project? And that really depends on where you're at today. If you've yet to acquire anything or enough assets, then I think now, until we get closer to the tokenomics news, will be a good time to purchase. Just be aware that you're going to be holding for at least a few months, if not longer, before those get their utility turned on. If you're looking to take some profits, and quite honestly, that's something that we've been meaning to do but unable to pull the trigger on here at the Freeroll, then my advice is wait until we get close to the tokenomics announcement. When we do, there will be a hype cycle and prices will rise in anticipation for what that news might entail. The risk is holding until after the news is released, because if it is perceived as good news by the community, then prices will probably hold or continue to rise. But if it is perceived as bad news, then you should expect prices to come back down. And because users' expectations in this space tend to be totally unrealistic, oftentimes it's perceived as bad news, even when it is actually good news. So if you're looking to take profits, there may be an opportunity to sell into the hype and then reacquire those assets at a cheaper price later on. Please note, though, that you are taking a very serious risk. If the news is good, then it could just take off and never be affordable for you again. If you purchased any 0 units with the intention of flipping them around the generative project, then you might want to consider dumping those a little bit early, because we now know that those are not going to come until Phase 1, which is still several months out. That said, as we get closer, the value of those units will likely rise, so there's some risk there as well. But I don't anticipate seeing another big pump around those items until we get closer to the actual generative drop, which won't happen until at least May. Beyond that, my recommendation is as simple as hold. This project still looks like one of the very best ones, and maybe at the end of this year, especially with the delays that Guild of Guardians has experienced, we might be looking at Frontier as the premium play and earn game in the space and one of the biggest stories of 2022. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, consider following us on Twitter. That's the best way to engage. If you have any questions or concerns, want to make a recommendation about another game that we should check out and potentially cover here, and make sure that you've hit that like and subscribe button. I say it every time, but it only takes 2 seconds and really helps support the channel.